We're into month 3 of the NFL season, and since the start of October, we have seen multiple teams have their stocks fluctuate tremendously. And throughout that time, two things have become abundantly clear. We know who the top dogs are right now, but also, there's a lot of bad football teams. Today, I'm going to give you, in my opinion, the power rankings of every single team, 1 through 32, just as I did at the beginning of last month, kind of like a preview of what's to come and how I feel about these teams here in the month of November, pre-Week 10. I apologize for being a little late on this one, kind of forgot when the start of November was, but better late than never. Let's dive straight into things, starting off with number 32. And I think we'll put down the Carolina Panthers. Yes, they did just get a big win over the Saints, and I'll give Bryce Young some credit. The last couple of weeks, definitely some improvements compared to most of his career thus far. But at the end of the day, they beat an extremely banged up Saints team. Derek Carr had just come back. Olave got hurt in that game as well. Things only got worse as the game progressed, and I just don't think they could do that on a week-to-week basis yet. I don't trust them to play that well just yet. I need to see more out of Bryce Young. I just need to see the level of talent increase with this team. It's hard to imagine them playing competitively every single week, and until then, they're probably still the worst team in the league. Number 31 will be the New England Patriots. Honestly, this team feels more exciting now that Drake May is out there rather than Jacoby Brissett, but the results are still largely the same. That Jets game, that was a nice feel-good win for them, but I don't know how much stock you can put into that knowing how the Jets have played so far this year. They're coming off a tough loss to the Titans as well. That offensive line is not showing any improvement. In general, offensively, they've been having a lot of struggles, and they just can't seem to get any stops either. They've easily been one of the worst teams in the league, and I feel pretty comfortable putting them at 31, especially if they just lost to Tennessee. Speaking of Tennessee, that's how I'm putting it the number 30 spot. Them and the Patriots are pretty interchangeable, just knowing how their game went over the previous Sunday. They were able to win that game over New England, so congrats to them. Not that it means much because they are one of the worst teams in the league at the end of the day. Their wins on the year have been some of the most unimpressive out of any team in the league to reach 2 wins. And if we're being honest, the only real redeeming quality of this team is their defense. They've been keeping them in a lot of games just for the offense to not really do much of anything. This Titans team is in the process of rebuilding and trying to figure out what comes next. They've been trading away key veterans here and there, so obviously they're one of the worst teams, just like New England. Because they beat them, I'll put them 1 spot higher. Number 29 will be the Vegas Raiders. This team, honestly, since they had that game against Denver where they got brutally beaten down, has felt like a clown fiesta, a pure shit show to watch. I mean, oh my god. They can't figure out who they want at quarterback. Aiden O'Connell goes down. They've benched Gardner Minshew mid-game multiple times already this season. It is getting ugly over there in Vegas, and there's no sign of it coming to a stop anytime soon. With the QB concerns, with the injuries on defense as well, with the coach maybe losing the locker room, the Raiders feel like one of the biggest lost causes in the league by far. Speaking of lost causes, at the 28 spot, I'm putting the New Orleans Saints. This team's talent would suggest they should be at least a couple of spots higher than this, but at the end of the day, they have lost 7 games in a row, and that's something that we can't ignore. I mean, they just hit a breaking point after firing their coach, losing to the Carolina Panthers. Simply unacceptable with the way this team has played. They've had a lot of key injuries, and it's not all their fault, which is why I am putting them at 28 rather than like 30 because of that crazy losing streak. Without Derek Carr there, they never stood a chance in a lot of those games in October, so it's understandable, but I don't know if things are going to change anytime soon. This season feels lost, and that's pretty depressing. And if we're talking about lost causes, I think the New York Giants are a very suitable team to put at 27. Honestly, they're lucky there's been so many terrible teams this year, otherwise they'd definitely be lower. This team has squandered so many opportunities to win games. They could very easily have like 4 or 5 wins right now, but every time there's a chance, Daniel Jones manages to throw it away. He hasn't always played terribly, but he sure as hell hasn't looked good either. Dude can't throw a deep ball, turns the ball over in key situations, and it took him half a year to throw a touchdown at home, for crying out loud. You can't win without a quarterback, you can't win without an O-line, and you certainly can't win without a secondary where Deonte Banks has given up touchdowns every single goddamn game. This team is garbage. End of story. And at number 26, I'm putting the Cleveland Browns. Honestly, they should be lower than this, but because Deshaun Watson is injured and they have Jameis Winston and they got a big one over the Ravens, I'm giving them a small boost. I'm still not impressed by them by any means. Their season is almost certainly over as they start cleaning house, but at least Jameis Winston gives them a chance every once in a while, you know? He's very inconsistent, as we've seen from the Ravens to the Chargers game in that span, but it's better than what they were working with before. They will be a more competitive football team overall for the rest of this year, so I'm happy to put them at 26. Number 25. The Jacksonville Jaguars. In a similar light, if not even worse to the Giants, the Jags have squandered away many opportunities to win games. If you look at the box score, they've been in most games they have played this year. Nothing has changed since the last time I made one of these power rankings. Every single week it is a contest, but they just can't execute. They could so easily be in the race right now to still be a playoff team. It's tragic what is happening to them. It's so unlucky, honestly, but at the end of the day, that's just the way it goes sometimes. This Jags team is not as bad as their record suggests, but because they can't get those wins on the board, it's hard to put them any higher than somewhere around here. Number 24. The Dallas Cowboys. It feels very weird to put this team this low, but my videos, my power rankings are all about projections for how I see teams doing coming into this month, my level of confidence in them. And the Cowboys are at an all-time low right now. They've looked like garbage this season. They have not looked competitive against any sort of relevant team. They can't stop the run. They can't run the ball themselves either. And on top of it all, Dak Prescott just got injured, and from the sound of it, he's going on IR, which means he'll be missing the next 4 weeks, and that could very easily lead to another 4 losses on the schedule, regardless of who Dallas is playing. The Cowboys simply feel like a lost cause. They're not as good as they once were, and Jerry Jones is refusing to accept things as facts. He's made a lot of mistakes, and he's blaming it on other people, and he's just riding it out being the delusional owner that he usually is. It's sad to see the Cowboys fall this way, but as a Cowboys hater, it's pretty funny. Anyway, at 23, we're going with the Miami Dolphins. Another 2-win team. You could argue Dallas should be above them because of that win factor, but I'm putting Miami a bit higher than I did in October because I think their offense is going to ramp up a bit. Their season's already in grave danger of being over, but I doubt they're going to go down that way. Their offense is too explosive, and I think they're overdue to start having some good games. We just saw them have a competitive outing against Buffalo, and in my opinion, it's a sign of things to come. Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle, it's only a matter of time until they start to get it going. They're going to put up some crazy outings like we saw last year. I don't know if it matters in the end. This season already might be over for them, but I think you will see improvement. At number 22, I have the Indianapolis Colts. I can't even believe I'm putting this team this high. There's just no way in hell they should be at number 22. The Colts are one of the worst 4-win teams I have ever seen. That is how bad the NFL is this year. We have to put the Colts at number 22, when realistically, even though their record says they're okay, it feels like everything's imploding from the inside. They can't get a lot of their offensive playmakers involved. They're not moving the ball well enough on a consistent basis. They've practically given up on Anthony Richardson already, at least for the time being. It feels like a disaster, regardless of what their win count might say. And after that whole Anthony Richardson drama, this truly might be the beginning of the end for this season. One that could have been promising is about to turn into an absolute dumpster fire. I think the Colts are about to go on a massive skid. At number 21, we have the Chicago Bears. And kind of like with the Colts, it feels like a weird team. It feels like anytime there's an opportunity to beat a good team, they're unable to do it. But they can take advantage of the bad teams on their schedule at the very least, which is what has allowed them to stay afloat. Caleb Williams, there's been a lot of struggles for this rookie. Naturally so. That's just how it goes sometimes. He's had some really good games and some really bad ones. The offense is not playing up to its potential. It feels like a complete coin toss as to what version of that Bears offense you're going to get, and the defense can only do so much. They've been holding up well, but if they're not scoring any points, then eventually they're going to fail, like we saw in that Arizona game. That's just the nature of this Bears team right now until Caleb and that offense can figure things out. They could be a good team, but they're just not there yet from a consistency standpoint, so they're slightly below average or at that average mark for sure. Number 20. The New York Jets. I understand they just got a big win over the Houston Texans, and maybe this is the point where they turn things around, but when I look at how this Jets team has done since like week 3, it's been a disaster. At one point, this team was on like a 5-game losing streak, for crying out loud. They lost to the Patriots as well. They fired their coach midseason. They are far from being in the clear. They've got to maintain consistency now. And with how the offense has looked in general, I don't know if it's going to happen. I liked what I saw in that Texans game. Lots of targets for Devontae and Garrett Wilson, getting the playmakers involved. But with all the drama with this Jets team, it just takes one bad mistake for them to suddenly be right back where they were the week before. I need to see more proof that this Jets team is about to turn it around. I know they have the talent to do so, but I need to see it from the quarterback now on a consistent basis. If they can prove me wrong, they'll go a lot higher. But first, they've got to get through a couple of other challenges before I'm truly convinced. At the 19 slot, I have the Denver Broncos. They're going to start to slide down little by little, I feel, as their schedule gets somewhat harder in these next couple of months, but you can't deny they still are above 500. They're 5-4, and while I haven't liked what I've seen against the good teams on their schedule, they've made some good quality wins happen. I still trust in that defense quite a bit. It honestly just depends on Bo Nix and his development. It felt like that Ravens game could have been closer than what it was. He missed a couple of key passes. The rookie mistakes were extremely present. I believe in this Broncos team to show some improvement, even if it doesn't necessarily reflect upon their final record. This team's scrappy. They're competitive. They'll give some more teams some trouble, but I just don't know how many wins that will translate to, hence why I'm only putting them at 19. At 18, we're going with the Seattle Seahawks. This is a really weird team, and I simply do not know how to feel about them. They feel about middle of the pack, just because one week they look really good. We see them take down a team like the Atlanta Falcons or be competitive against top contenders in the NFC. But then the next, they're losing to the Giants. They're choking an overtime game against the Rams. It's a very strange football team. Geno Smith is like leading the league in passing yards. Clearly, they have a dangerous offense, and the defense has shown up at times. It's just not always translating in the box score, and that's the weird thing with this team. They're another team that's just lacking that consistency. If Geno didn't see ghost against the Rams all the freaking time, they could have won that game easily just knowing how much he turned the ball over. If they can make some improvements and they can get hot here in November, it's going to be looking real good for them. They will be a threat to win their division. But as of right now, because of the ups and downs, I don't have the confidence in them to put them ahead of a couple of other teams in the NFC West. And one of those teams happens to be the Rams, who I've got at number 17. They're very comparable to the Seahawks. I think their close matchup is evidence of that, but I feel a bit more confident in them just because they're getting their weapons back now, and there's more of a chance for them to turn their season around and potentially make a playoff run than the Seattle Seahawks, in my opinion, just knowing what happened last year and everything. Puka and Cooper Kupp were hurt for a while. They're back, and we're seeing that translate into wins. A big win over the Vikings, followed by this win against Seattle, is a tremendous boost in the LA Rams stonks. Number 16, the Cincinnati Bengals. I have them smack dab right in the middle as just an okay team. Some people will argue they should be in the bottom half, as their defense is not anything special, and that's totally understandable, but I think this Bengals team is going to turn it up, and in general, they haven't played that bad at all this year. I mean, they've been in most games they've played. They've almost beaten a lot of really good teams. They've shown me they've had that competitive spirit. They've just fallen short because of their defense. And I think now that they're a bit healthier, maybe they'll show at least some minor improvements. And there's such little margin for error for this Bengals team sitting at 4-5. They can't afford to drop some games or make a lot of mistakes. And I believe Joe Burrow and those boys are going to clutch out some big wins over the next handful of weeks. They can't afford to lose them, and they'll show us why they are very capable of being a competitor in the AFC. In the meantime, though, we're going to move on to the 15th spot, which is the LA Chargers, who have been another really strange team. They're floating around that 500 mark with the potential to be a wild card playoff team. Sometimes they don't look all that impressive. Other times they absolutely beat you down with a good running game and a solid defense as well. It's been a hard team to get a grasp on. There's been a lot of super winnable games that they've managed to drop. So it's kind of up to you on what you think of this Chargers team. They're not all that special in my opinion, but at the very least, it seems like they're starting to make some improvements. Justin Herbert and the offense are ramping things up slowly but surely. Finally, after all this time, they're taking more shots downfield. They're becoming a more explosive offense overall, and we might see this Chargers team take another leap or two here in November, going into the early portions of December. It kind of feels like that. It's been a while since we've seen the Justin Herbert of old, and he just might be making a grand return. And if that's the case, the rest of the league may be in big trouble. Number 14, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. In spite of some disastrous injuries and being on a 3-game losing streak, I still feel entitled to put them in the top half of the league. This Bucs team still isn't bad at all, despite the odds being up against them, despite losing Chris Godwin for the season, being without Mike Evans the last handful of weeks. I've just seen that competitive nature. They almost just beat the Chiefs. That game went to overtime. Who the hell knows what happens if they're using playoff rules in that scenario? Baker has looked like a hero. He is not giving up. He's shown such growth as a quarterback since coming to Tampa. I love what they're doing right now. They're spreading the ball. The offense can still make plays. They can run the ball well. This Bucs team is not to be trifled with. And once they get Mike Evans back, they're still absolutely a threat to not only win their division, but be a playoff team. It's an uphill battle from here, but with how they've played against Atlanta and the Chiefs recently, and even Baltimore to a certain extent, I have all the reason in the world to still believe in this Bucs team. And at number 13, speaking of believing in guys, I have the San Francisco 49ers. It hasn't been great for these guys. I understand that, but going off of projections alone, I believe this will be a great bounce back month for them, as Christian McCaffrey is supposedly set to make his return in Week 10, and that completely changes how this offense operates. If they have him, they'll be more like their old selves. I can promise you that. That's just the type of player that McCaffrey is. That's how much he means to Brock Purdy. They've been insane with the pass game, but the run game hasn't always been there, even though Mason and crew haven't done that bad of a job. McCaffrey is just a completely different guy to game plan around, and we're going to see that. I think this Niners team will be more competitive. They'll have a lot more fire in them, and they're going to come back strong here in November and potentially reclaim the NFC West crown. But for now, I actually have the Arizona Cardinals ahead of them at number 12. Listen, I've been a Cardinals doubter all season, but I can't deny they're playing some damn good football right now. Some quality stuff from them. Like, genuinely, they're winning their division right now by a half game. They're 5-4. They've won 3 straight, and in those matches, they've shown a good combination of grit, playing hard in a super close back and forth game, like with the Chargers, low scoring, but then at the same time, high scoring against Miami. They just blew out the Bears as well. This Cardinals team is showing major signs of life on both sides of the ball. Kyler Murray's playing the best he has in years. I love the way the offense is operating. They feel like a dark horse contender in the NFC to not only make the playoffs, but maybe even win a game. It feels like the Kyler redemption arc. Maybe Call of Duty is giving him a buff this time. We'll have to wait and see how that goes. For now, at number 11, I'm putting down the Houston Texans. Honestly, I almost put them a lot lower than this, but it didn't feel quite right because they still have such a high ceiling. But I've got to face the truth here that the Texans have kind of been a letdown so far. We were all expecting a huge jump from this team to be right in the thick of it to compete for the AFC Championship even, but so far, the execution hasn't been all that great. They're in no danger of losing their division, like missing the playoffs or anything, but they're 6-3, and I don't even feel that good about where their record is, knowing the quality of football that they've played. One possession every time without fail. We just saw them lose to the Jets as well. I don't love where this Texans team is at. They have such high upside, but they're not showing it right now. And that's just the sad truth, you know? They are a young team, and even though the expectations are high and the talent is there, they're not going to always have the consistency. There's a lot of room for them to turn up the heat in these next couple of months. I'm confident they'll stay afloat. But they've got to play better than this if they don't want to be overrated. Speaking of overrated, at number 10, I'm dropping down the Philadelphia Eagles. They're on a winning streak right now. I understand. You got to give them credit for that. Jalen Hurts has made some very good throws on a week-to-week basis. Saquon has been dominant. The defense has also shown improvement, and they find themselves sitting pretty at 6-2. But outside of the Bengals game, in the Giants, a lot of these games have not been pretty. Packers game, definitely not. The Falcons game they lost. The Saints, they easily could have lost. Blown out by the Bucs. Browns game was closer than it should have been. And they almost choked away the Jaguars game in one of the most epic meltdowns I've seen in recent memory. It's good that they're winning the games they should, but I'm curious to see how they play against the Commanders or like the Ravens on December 1st, let's say. That's going to be telling to see if this Eagles team truly is worthy of being one of the top teams. Because right now, I'm not totally convinced. They're 6-2, I'll give them their flowers, but there's a lot of bad teams this year, and that is certainly working to their advantage. Number 9, the Atlanta Falcons. I get it, this may seem a little high, but honestly, compared to a lot of these other teams, they feel like they're heading in a great direction right now as a football team. Since the start of October, they had that big overtime win against the Bucs. They've beaten them twice, in fact, now to have a huge lead in their division. And in general, the offense is ramping up. They're starting to unlock the potential that we knew they had the moment that Kirk Cousins signed here. Drake London's been finding the end zone a lot. Darnell Mooney has good games. Kyle Pitts finally looks like the superstar he was supposed to be. They've been feeding Bijan a lot more. The Falcons' offense is in a serious rhythm, and I see them as a bigger threat than most. I like their chances of being a good competitor in the NFC, and I think they're going to start to ride a winning streak as we reach December. At number 8, I have the Minnesota Vikings, who are suffering a bit of a fall off compared to October. Not a significant one, at least just yet, but we can't deny they've lost 2 games since October started. Tough one to the Lions, and then they got beat down pretty good by the Rams as well. And that Colts game for a while was a lot more close than it should have been. It never felt like the outcome was in doubt necessarily, but it took them a while to pull away, and I'm not a fan of that. The defense has been letting up a bit. Sam Darnold has been a bit more ridden with his mistakes as well. This Vikings team is still solid. We've seen them move the ball with efficiency still. They can make the stops on defense, but it just hasn't been as dominant as once before, so naturally they're going to fall down a bit. And if this pace keeps up, then suddenly they may not be so relevant anymore, so hopefully things start to pick up here in November. Number 7, the Pittsburgh Steelers. Damn, I can't believe I'm putting them this high, but I can't deny Pittsburgh have looked pretty damn good. I wasn't sure what the hell was going to happen when they switched from Justin Fields to Russell Wilson, but they've looked better ever since it's happened. This is the best the Steelers offense has looked in like 3, maybe even 4 years. Some of the teams they've beaten recently haven't been the greatest, but still, 3 blowout victories in a row. The only games they've lost were 1 possession, literally by a field goal in each of them, and Russ looks so great right now, throwing the ball downfield. They have a deep ball again. George Pickens has been getting a lot of touches. The run game looks good, and that defense is still very ferocious. With how they've improved offensively, the Steelers genuinely feel like a well-balanced, well-coached team, and I think they deserve to be somewhere in the top 10 as a result. Because they're on a winning streak, I put them at 7. They're 6-2. They're winning their division. You could argue maybe they're a little lower, maybe a little higher. But at the end of the day, this Steelers team deserves a lot of respect for the quality football they've played as of late. Number 6, the Green Bay Packers. Honestly, you might even say the Steelers should be higher than them because they have the better record and everything, and the Packers are coming off that tough loss to Detroit. But I think it's a one-off thing, and they'll be fine. I expect them to come back strong and play well the rest of this way through, just like last year. Their offense is too high octane, and defensively, they've been pretty strong. Despite giving up 24 in the box score against Detroit, their defense actually only gave up 17, which is pretty damn impressive knowing how amazing that Detroit offense has been this year. They've been disruptive with the pass rush. They're forcing turnovers. This Pack team is extremely well-rounded, and I think they're kind of suffering from some injuries, and as they get healthier, they'll be okay. That Detroit game was tough. Maybe they weren't totally prepared. There was the rain and everything as well. They'll be okay, though. This team is still very much a threat, and in my opinion, they're one of the best teams in the league. At number 5, though, is the Washington Commanders. I am absolutely amazed that I'm putting them this high in a power ranking here in the modern era, but Jaden Daniels is the truth, man. Him and the Commanders just keep getting better. Jaden Daniels has looked cool, calm, and collected. He's led some clutch drives. The offense has been explosive. We've seen the dude throw a Hail Mary to win a game. The Commanders are incredible. Despite my concerns for them on defense, they always find ways to score points. Jaden Daniels has looked like an absolute veteran out there. The run game is nasty. They've got a good deep ball. This Commanders team has it figured out. I'm wondering how they'll do when they play another top-tier opponent, maybe like the Philadelphia Eagles, let's say. But with how they've done so far in terms of their consistency, you've got to really like how this Commanders team is playing. They've been a top 5 team just in terms of how hot they are. I mean, they're freaking 7-2. I'm not quite ready to put them inside of the top 5 though, as at 4, we're going with the Buffalo Bills. It was a little shaky at first for this team, but they've been playing out of their mind lately. Good winning streak going, and they've beaten some tough teams along the way. Josh Allen has gotten out of that funk he was in. He's playing a lot better, not turning the ball over a lot this year, which is a rarity for him. And I love that they added Amari Cooper to this offense. It just adds an extra dimension to make them more dangerous. And it just feels like this Buffalo team has it figured out. They moved on from Stephon Diggs and some of the stuff that was causing issues before. And now they're a super legit team that feels a lot more happy and just in their wheelhouse. I'm excited to see how they do against some tough opponents in the coming weeks. It's just about getting through the regular season. That's the key thing. They've shown me that this division is theirs for the taking. It's not close, and now we just have to see how January goes. Speaking of seeing how January goes, how about the Baltimore Ravens at number 3? This team has played beautifully. I know that loss against the Browns kind of stings, but we know the Ravens by now. They love to do this kind of nonsense where they randomly lose games they shouldn't, but they end up being fine, and that's how this last month has basically gone for them. They beat a lot of really good football teams, man. We're talking the Commanders and the Bengals. We saw the way they took care of business against the Bucs. The Broncos are above 500, and they're winning a lot of these games convincingly. It's not always a blowout in the box score, but the outcome's usually never in doubt. The execution's been there. Lamar Jackson and Derrick Henry have been on a mission, both arguably MVP candidates in the league right now. This team is absolutely disgusting offensively. Lamar slinging it. Zay Flowers is improving. Love what I see from the Baltimore Ravens right now. Love, love, love it. Easily one of the best teams in the league. At number 2, I am surprisingly going with the Kansas City Chiefs. I know in the last Power Rankings video I said they're undefeated, so they should be number 1, defending Super Bowl champs, yada, yada, yada. But I can't in good faith put them number 1 right now, just knowing how the Lions have been doing. It's no, knock on the Chiefs. I mean, they are 8-0, and this team has been unbelievably clutch. But the fact of the matter is, they haven't won, any games comfortably. Knowing who they are, that's just not acceptable. They should be winning some of these games by more, but they just can't for some reason. It's always this grinded out type of match. No matter who they're playing, everybody rises up to the occasion to play the Chiefs. But also, it kind of goes both ways, right? Winning the close ones matters for something, right? And the Chiefs have done it. They're undefeated, well on their way to potentially winning the Super Bowl again with the elite play when it matters down the stretch, with Mahomes completing big passes, the defense making stops, and how about D-Hop joining this team? How in God's name did the rest of the league let this happen? He is being an immediate contributor on this team, and things can only get better from here. This Chiefs team realistically could actually get more scary. They're overdue for a loss. I'm sure it happens eventually, but in the grand scheme of things, that really may not matter. But I am dethroning them at number 1 because we got to put the Lions there. They may have a loss on their resume, but this last month, they've been playing some unreal football. The offense can't be stopped. Goff has thrown himself right into the MVP conversation. The Lions are on a 5-game winning streak right now, and in that process, every single game has been a damn near masterclass from this dude. A near perfect completion percentage every single game, not making any mistakes at all, always picking up the big game, even without Jameson Williams there. The run game is still crazy. Jahmyr Gibbs has been on a mission with some of those huge plays he's been making. It's been insane to watch this Lions team execute at such a high level every week, without question. And not for nothing, but the defense has played some relatively good games here and there as well, even without Aiden Hutchinson in the lineup thanks to his injury and everything. Detroit have beaten some of the best possible competitors in their way. They are clearly the best team in the NFC, and in my opinion, they are easily the hottest team in the league. Even if they have that loss on their resume, they've just played better than the Chiefs. More dominant, more convincing. As of right now, as far as I'm concerned, they are the team to beat in this league. With that said, though, that's going to do it for my power rankings for November. Let me know what you think down in the comments below and what your power rankings look like. And if you enjoyed this video, be sure to give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel for more weekly NFL content.